What's good, Blum Squad? It's your boy Sean P. the Blum guy. Hey! And we are back with another One Piece reaction. Today, Saki will be telling us a little bit about your Uranus, right? And the title of today's video is Uranus will take One Piece to the moon. Now, I got some stuff to say about that, but before we get into that, make sure you guys hit that like button. Also, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Also, leave a comment down below your thoughts on the video today. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? Also, follow me on Twitch so you can engage with me in real time. If you want to connect with me directly, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and join the Discord. That's usually where I'm the most active at. And if you want to send me content to react to, like the video we are reacting to today, I have a submission channel in the Discord for you guys. And if you want to be part of a future discussion stream, make sure you are a member of the Discord. But all right, let's get into this video. So like I said, the video today we are reacting to is from Saki, and the title of today's video is Uranus will take One Piece to the moon. Now, we get a lot of talk about going to the moon, right? Like, I've heard a lot of talk about going to the moon, going into space, right? One Piece going into space. Now, I have a bit of mixed reaction to that. Well, I don't even want to say mix. I think it's more on one side, right? I think I'm more on one side of the fence, right? I don't think we'll be going to space in the series. At least not in the main series. I don't believe it. I don't believe that we're going to space in this main series. I just think Oda made a statement a few months back, right, that he was trying to end One Piece within 3 to 5 years. But then recently he came up with a statement, I think at Shonen Fiesta. It was like one of them events, right? One of them shonen anime events or whatever. He said like that I guess he wasn't going to end it that soon, right? Like, it's like I don't never really take Oda's word serious when he talks about when the series is going to end, because he's made so many statements like, oh, I'm gonna end it in this many years, and then next time he'll say it again and it'll be completely different. So I don't take those serious anymore. So when he said 3 to 5 years, I looked at it as, if he was serious, I looked at it more closer to the 5 year ending. 3 years just didn't seem realistic in my opinion. And then he recently made a statement kind of saying like, okay, just forget I even said that, right? So I still do think Oda is trying to wrap this series up, right? Like, I think 3 years was unrealistic, because when he said that, I think that was like 2 years ago, deep, like in the middle of the Wano saga. And I'm like, bro, 3 years don't seem realistic. 5 years, I do think Oda is trying to wrap this series up, right? Like, maybe in the next 5 years, like now, right? From now, 5 years possibly. But I just don't think going to space, I don't think we have time to go to space, right? Like, we have to have this war, right? The big war, where I think is most likely going to be like world government against pirates, right? The whole pirates against world government. We gotta have that. We gotta find Laugh-Tale, right? We gotta find Laugh-Tale in One Piece. Luffy versus Blackbeard, right? There's a few things that need to wrap up, right? And I think it's possible that we could wrap up this story in the next 5 years. But if we go to the moon, I think that's going to really extend the series. And this is pretty much why I don't think we're going to the moon. I think going to the moon would open up it will open up something that would give us so much more to the story. And I don't think Oda is trying to add too much into the story that's going to extend it any further than it's already going to take, right? Because I know we got to find Laugh Tale. The conflict with Blackbeard needs to be wrapped up, and and the war, right? And this war with the world government, going to war with the pirates, right? And possibly destroying the Red Line. I just think if we go to the moon, that's going to add a lot of stuff, a lot of factors into the story, which is going to extend it way more than Oda. I would think Oda would like it to be extended. So I don't see that being the case. I don't, I, but, let me also say this, but if Oda was to like do a spin-off series, or if he was to somehow do a sequel series, right, where it's like a continuation, maybe. I have my opinions on spin-offs. I would like to see Oda, maybe not Oda per se, maybe like somebody in his team, maybe they could take the reins to this. But I personally would like to see some spin-offs, right? Like maybe some spin-offs that don't have anything to do with finding the One Piece. Give us some spin-offs that explore the One Piece universe or the One Piece world more. You know what I'm saying? Like finding like a lot of locations that were stated in the series as at some point, but we never went to. Like I would like to see that. Maybe expand on some characters that we never really got to expand on, but are still interesting characters, right? Like I've thrown around the idea of a Shank spinoff, right? Like with a Shank spinoff, we'll get some Mihawk stuff, we'll get some Goldie Rogers stuff, we'll get to see how Shanks became a Yonko, all these things. And there's other spinoff ideas that I've thrown around as well. But with a spinoff, I think it opens the possibility of exploring the moon or the One Piece universe, because the One Piece universe is expansive. Oda has introduced the idea of space pirates and aliens, right? So there is more to the One Piece universe other than the One Piece Earth, right? So a spin-off sequel could expand on that, or create like another series that's still within the One Piece universe, but it's focused on stuff outside of the One Piece Earth, right? Maybe some other planets. We could do some pirate stuff in the universe. That would be dope. But in the current story, the current canon, I think going to the moon would extend the story more than Oda would like. That's my pushback on us seeing anything outside of the Earth. All right, y'all. So let's get into the video. This is from Saki. Yeah.
Three ancient weapons that exist in the One Piece world, I think it's fair to say that Uranus has been the one that Oda has kept under wraps the most. It's only been mentioned by name one time in the story so far, which is nothing compared to Poseidon, who we've already met, and Pluton, whose location has already been discovered by the Straw Hats. I mean, why is Oda keeping his cards so close to his chest with this one in particular?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like Uranus is still wrapped up in a lot of mystery, and though, to throw this out there, because I think it's worth noting, a few chapters or a number of chapters ago, after Wano, like right after the Wano arc, we got a chapter where we got an update on Sabo, and we went to an island called Elusia Island. And something, right, while Sabo was talking to the other revolutionaries, something we see in the sky. It was like we see the silhouette figure of some UFO looking thing, like some spacecraft looking thing. It was right over the island, and it pretty much released these beams that pretty much destroyed the whole island of Elusia. Now, a lot of speculation is that thing that was in the sky, that weapon was Poseidon. Now, it wasn't confirmed. I don't know. It makes sense for it to be something that could destroy an island to that degree to be an ancient weapon. So it's possible that that could be Uranus that we've seen. Indeed. I personally believe that Uranus is something that is in the sky. I think it has something to do with the sky. I believe that Uranus is something that controls or it can manipulate the weather. That's what I believe. Because when we look at each god, right, we look at Poseidon. Poseidon is the god of the ocean, right? Poseidon can control seafaring animals, right? Like the god Poseidon. That's what he could do. When we look at the ancient weapon Poseidon, Shirahoshi, she can control sea kings. Pluton is pretty much Hades, the god of the underworld. We know that the ancient weapon Pluton can destroy islands, which, I mean, how you connect that? You could connect that the fact that it could destroy islands. It could kill people at a high rate, right? Which means people die, they go to the afterlife. Hades is connected with the afterlife, so you could kind of relate it in that way. Uranus is the primordial titan, which is the embodiment of the sky and the heavens, right? So I look at it having to do with something with the sky, something connected with the sky, possibly weather control. But again, we don't really know much about Uranus, so it's all speculation at this point. It's all speculation.
Took us until chapter 1073 to learn a single Gorosei member's name, and he just so happens to be named Saturn, which is the adjacent planet to Uranus in our own solar system. And he is one of the highest ranking members of the Celestial Dragons, which is a name I think we've taken for granted up until now, and we've actually met several.
Yeah, I wanted to I had a discussion about that chapter, and I forgot to bring that aspect up. That the Gorosei members are possibly named after planets. At least the one that we've seen was confirmed to be named after the planet Saturn, right? And when you look at the Gorosei, they are celestial dragons, but planets are celestial bodies, right? Like you got the sun, which is like the main celestial body, and then all the other planets are also considered celestial bodies. So it makes sense, right? That the celestials, dragons, and then the highest ranking celestial dragons are named after celestial bodies of I guess the celestial bodies, which are the planets in the solar system, right? And it kind of remind me, if you guys seen that movie Eternals, it's like that Marvel movie Eternals, the Celestials, right? They're like gods, the Celestials, and they are actually born in the MCU. When we look at the MCU, I'm not talking about the comics for all you comic nerds. I don't want y'all in there correcting me. But in the movies, in the MCU, the Celestial Dragons or the Celestials are born from planets. So the Celestials are born from celestial bodies as well. So I just kind of wanted to, I don't know why I'm bringing that. This isn't a Marvel topic, but yeah.
Races that were originally from outer space, and since those people now live in the sky, I think we can start piecing together what Uranus actually is. But I think the first step is to kind of break down each of the other ancient weapons to give us a frame of reference for Uranus, such as how each of them represent different gods from Greek mythology. Poseidon was the god of the sea, which ended up being pretty appropriate for Shirahoshi, who can control the sea.
And I do believe Uranus is connected to the moon, right? I do, because my thing with the ancient weapons, I think they were all created by different races, possibly. Like I think Poseidon, well, Poseidon wasn't created by different weapons, but Poseidon is connected with the fishermen. I think Uranus is probably connected with the sky people, the sky races. I think Uranus might have been created on the moon, possibly. But I do think Uranus has a connection with the sky races, which can also have a connection with the moon because we know that the sky races used to live on the moon at one point. But so yeah, I do think Uranus. I am with Dak that Uranus probably has a connection with the moon. I just don't think we're going to be going to the moon in this series, or I don't think we'll be going outside of Earth, at least One Piece Earth.
Kings, and Pluton is the god of the underworld, which also seems kind of appropriate since it's deep beneath Wano right now. And then Uranus was the god of the sky, which sets up the ancient weapons to potentially be masters of their own domains in a way. Furthermore, if we use Poseidon as an example, they all may have had more than one component to them. Shirahoshi is technically Poseidon, but her power is really driven by the fact that she can command the powerful Sea Kings. And they're also supposed to work together to ultimately pull the fishmen to the surface on the Noah at some point in the future. Now, while
I don't know, like that to me that makes the most sense. But I've had discussions talking about like the Noah is not for the fishmen, which makes sense because why do fishmen need a ship to get to the surface when they can swim? They're fish, right? They're partial fish. We've seen Cammy, I think it was Cammy and the starfish. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, I think they swam from Fishman Island up to the surface to go to Sabaody, right? Because it was stated, like, they would, sometimes the fish people would go to the surface to go see what's going on at Sabaody because they had the amusement park and everything. So, it's not like they can't track, even though that might be a long journey. So, it could be like, just look at it like this. Think of it in this way. The journey from from Fishman Island to the surface might be the equivalent of someone walking from Philadelphia to New York, right? Like, it's possible. We all got, like, humans, we got legs, so we could walk, right? We can do that, but it's such a long journey that it's taxing. So for a fisherman to swim from Fishman Island to the surface, it might be a long journey. So it might just be better to take a ship that's being pulled by Sea Kings, because otherwise it's like walking from Philadelphia to New York. It's a few hour drive from Philadelphia to New York, but if you walking, it could be like a day or two. You know what I mean? So like it could be like hours to like a day or so.
While Oda may not stick to this exact template for every ancient weapon, it at least gives us a rough idea as we consider the other two. For Pluton, we've already heard that it's a type of ship, which kind of parallels the Noah right away. But if you followed the channel at all or even heard my introduction on the Reverie, then you would know that I think Pluton is a bit more complicated than that. I mean, Sukiyaki did say it was sleeping.
Spoiler alert for anybody who haven't watched Dak Sake's big theory about Pluton. Spoiler alert, the theory is Pluton is a mole. It like digs under, and I actually kind of agree with that theory. He wasn't the first person I seen that said something about Pluton being like something like that digs. It was a theory from Dawn of the World. I love crediting her because I seen her theory before I seen Dak Saki's theory. Even though I think they came out around the same time, I don't know who dropped first. But her idea was that it was built in Water 7. Pluton was built in Water 7, and it dug through Enies Lobby. That's why we see that big old waterfall, and it ended up in Wano. But it still has something to do with it digging, right? And I think that I like that idea that Pluton is a digger, and maybe it has like geological abilities where it could manipulate the terrain, right? So it destroys islands by destroying the terrain or destroying the plates under the islands creating like a earthquake that could, in a sense, destroy an island. Like so that's kind of what I believe. So I'm on board with the theory with Saki and Dawn of the Worlds theories, as Pluton is a digger. Even though some of the specifics of each theory are a little different, but y'all go check their theories out. Dawn of the World and Dex. Go check out their Pluton theories.
Beneath the castle, which doesn't sound like the word you would use for an inanimate ship, and could hint that Pluton and maybe just all of the ancient weapons are based on living things. But of course, we need to move on to Uranus, so I'll just throw my Pluton theory in the description for now, because what's important to take away here is that, other than being able to destroy the world of course, both Poseidon and Pluton seem to share one key characteristic, and that's providing some type of transportation. The Noah is meant to be pulled by the Sea Kings to get the fishmen to the surface at some point in the future, and Pluton itself has been called a ship, which is the quintessential way of traveling in the One Piece world. So I thought to myself, have we seen anything in the story that transports people through the sky? And I would argue that we've seen quite a few. The Arc Maxim is one of the first things that comes to mind, but there were also creatures native to Skypiea that helped the crew travel up and down while we were there. I mean, when we first got there, Zoro sliced a fish that popped like a balloon, which was a hint right away that things were different up here. And when we got to Heaven's Gate, which, by the way, Uranus is also the god of the heavens, the express lobster is what took them up to Skypiea. And after the arc was over, an octopus balloon took them back down to the Blue Sea. So this shows us that Sky Island creatures have a knack for helping people travel through the sky. So I think whatever Uranus is, it's probably better at it than anybody. But even Momonosuke and Kaido are good examples, who are both dragons capable of transporting people through the air thanks to the use of their flame clouds. We saw Momonosuke fly Luffy back up to Onigashima to fight Kaido again, and Kaido actually used his flame clouds to transport the entirety of Onigashima in the first place. And then that led me to another thought. Aren't flame clouds very similar to the clouds that make up Sky Islands? They both somehow suspend massive weight in mid-air, unlike normal clouds are able to do, and Kaido's flame clouds moving Onigashima.
Oh, that's actually an interesting thought, right? Like, could it have been a dragon that created the Sky Islands? Possibly. Or did they learn, like the sciences back in the ancient kingdom, or maybe some science. Did they learn how to create these clouds? Like, did they see a dragon, right? Were there like dragons like Kaido that existed before devil fruits came about? And were they able to create these clouds, which the scientists of the ancient kingdom possibly like reverse engineered and learned how to create these clouds, which in a sense created these Sky Islands? Good point. I never put those two and two together. How Kaido pretty much, his clouds almost act as Sky Island clouds. Almost.
Onigashima through the sky is pretty similar to the white Sky Island clouds carrying the Verth that was Shandora. So I wonder if there's some type of parallel, since Shandora is where we first saw Luffy in the Nika pose after all, and Onigashima is where Luffy went into Gear 5th for the first time and did that pose yet again. And we learned in Skypiea.
Hey, Dex forgetting about that Brook panel on Fishman Island when he did the whole Joy Boy pose. Or the Nika pose.
That white clouds are made with a substance called pyrobloin or pyrobloin, which come from the volcanoes below, which draws an interesting connection to flame clouds right away, since fire or magma seem to be involved in those as well.
True.
And since dragons can breathe.
True, I didn't think of that. I forgot about like how pyrobloin is created. The clouds are made of pyrobloin, and you look at Kaido, he's like a dragon, so that heat could almost create a pyrobloin, like an artificial pyrobloin or something.
fire or even coat themselves in magma as we saw with Kaido, perhaps these clouds are very close to being the same thing because dragons can just supply their own pyrobloin like volcanoes do to sky islands. But I would just suspect that flame clouds are maybe more susceptible to being put out with water or something like we saw with Raizo, as where white clouds might be a little more reliable. But how does this all tie back into Uranus? I mean, am I saying that Uranus is some big cloud, or maybe just Kaido or Momonosuke?
Yeah, maybe Kaido, like the clouds that he create, because he's kind of creating, like you could say he's kind of imitating pyro blowing, because he's a dragon and his heat, the flame breath. So in a sense, he could create like a cheapened pyro blowing, because you look at volcanoes create magma, which is super hot, right? Where even though Kaido's flames were said to be as hot as magma, maybe they're not like one for one as hot as magma, so therefore they can't create like the power blowing that Kaido creates is as permanent as the power blowing magma creates. It doesn't stay around as long, or but I don't know. Maybe Kaido can control how long he keeps his clouds. I would think that would be the case. I think when he was defeated, that's when the clouds kind of dissipated. So, he has to actively keep the pyro blowing active, or the clouds. He has to keep the clouds active, whereas like the sky clouds are always active. They're more permanent. They stick around forever. So, yeah, I guess that's what makes them different. But is that more of a heat factor, or is it? I don't know.
Nosuke, since they can create similar clouds and transport people through the sky with them? Not exactly, but we're definitely getting there, because One Piece actually has a lot of blue sea snake-like things that are tied to the sky. I mean, Kaido's fruit is technically a fish fruit, yet he can fly with flame clouds, and Momo might look pink, but it's the only thing Vegapunk got wrong when copying Kaido's blue dragon fruit. I mean, maybe it can't awaken, but we haven't seen that yet, but everything else is the same at least. And then in Shandora, which was sent to the sky 400 years ago, they worshipped a blue sea snake as a sun god of all things. And there's even this thing living on the moon where the Shandians are from in the first place. And yes, this thing is canon, and we'll get back to him at some point. But the fact they are all tied to the sky in some way, or even live there, is really important because of where the other two ancient weapons have been located. Poseidon was found at the bottom of the ocean, which is fitting for the god of the sea, and Pluton, the god of the underworld, is deep beneath Wano's castle. So I don't think it's much of a stretch to think that Uranus would be found in the sky as well, which takes us to none other than Skypiea, and more specifically Shandora, because of the Shandians' belief in their sun god and their origins on the moon. As we saw in Enel's cover story, the Shandians, Skypieans, and Birkins all lived on the moon until at least 1100 years ago, when they all had to come to Earth because of resources. And each of them went on to have close ties to at least some type of god. The Skypieans called their leader god, like Gonfall, and then Enel was a Birkin who called himself a god. And then most importantly, the Shandians somehow went on to worship a blue sea snake as a sun god of all things. And yes, it is likely a sea serpent of some kind, because we saw it rise out of the water back in Nolan's flashback. Which is an interesting tie to Kaido, because like I said, he actually has a fish fruit. It's just a model of an azure dragon. And I know that Skypiea has gotten a lot more focus lately since the reveal of Gear 5th and Sun God Nika, but I still think we've kind of taken for granted the fact that the Shandians needed some type of reason to call this serpent a sun god specifically. I mean, obviously Nolan did the right thing by ending their ceremony and killing their god, but what could have happened long ago that led the Shandians to believe a snake like that is a god in the first place? So what happened that...
Yeah, I don't know, cause he's right. I do remember watching this Skypiea arc, recently, and I remember them calling him the sun god. I think this was around the time where Nika was mentioned. I think this was before the reveal, but around that same time, and I do remember saying, I'm like, sun god, that like. I remember seeing theories about sun god and everything, and this was before I think the whole Nika reveal, like the Gear Fifth reveal or whatever. But I know in Greek mythology, because when we look at these gods, they're closely related to Greek and Roman mythology, right? So there is this creature called the world snake, which is like this huge snake that I think it could wrap around the whole world, right? Like I think it's called the world snake. And I don't think it's considered a god, but it's pretty big snake, right? So, and if you ever play God of War, the first or the first reboot, like the recent God of War that came out, the God of War before that one, there was like the world snake as well. But that I might be wrong. I think that might be Norse mythology. That might not be Greek mythology. That might be Norse mythology. The world snake. Let me know in the comments. I don't know. Some of y'all might be more versed than I am in mythology.
Made this line of snakes so important to the Shandians, who were originally from the moon but also allies to the ancient kingdom. And wait a second, doesn't that sound kind of familiar? A race from the moon thinks that a blue sea serpent thing was the sun god? Maybe like when King, a Lunarian, whose race's name alone implies that they're from the moon, believed that Kaido, who has the powers of a blue sea serpent thing technically, was Joy Boy, who we know used the same sun god powers as Luffy. That's very similar to the Shandians, who are also from the moon, worshipping a blue sea snake thing as a sun god, who obviously ties right back into Joy Boy and Nika. So this builds an interesting connection.
That's an interesting connection, but my thing is, did King know that Kaido could turn into a sea serpent, quote unquote, type of thing, right? Like, did King know about Kaido's dragon transformation at that time when he talked to Kaido and asked was he Joy Boy? But yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Connection between not only Kaido and the supposed gods of Shandora, but also Joy Boy and even the moon, which had their own blue creature as I mentioned earlier. Perhaps there was an actual dragon at some point in the past, much like the one that Kaido is based on, that could be commanded like Poseidon commands the Sea Kings. And when the Sea Kings were holding the Noah, they commented how their king is always reborn as a mermaid every few hundred years. I wonder why. If Poseidon was a mermaid the first time, then they wouldn't be wondering why Shirahoshi is one now, right? So that tells me that Poseidon may not have been a mermaid or a fishman at all the first time around, but perhaps yet another dragon because their palace.
I don't know. Wasn't didn't Vanderdecken, if I remember, Vanderdecken, like the original Vanderdecken, not the current Vanderdecken, but Vanderdecken went to the sea to look for a mermaid princess that can communicate with sea kings. Like, that's what Vanderdecken was looking for. And this was like before Roger's time. This was like back then. This was like a long time ago. He was looking for a mermaid princess that can control sea kings. So that would make me believe, because this was before Shirahoshi, right? We know that Goldie Roger at one point talked to Madam Shirley, who told Roger about the mermaid princess Shirahoshi being born, right? But this was during Roger's time. But Vanderdecken, the original Vanderdecken, was looking for a mermaid princess that could talk to sea kings a long time ago. So that kind of would imply that Poseidon, or the being that could talk, communicate, and command sea kings, existed as a mermaid princess like a long time ago, which means that it kind of shows a pattern or a trend that Poseidon is usually a mermaid princess. So I don't know if I agree with where Dak is going here. I don't know if I agree with it.
literally has a dragon at the top like Kaido and Momonosuke. But maybe Uranus wasn't just a way to transport through the Earth's sky, but also outer space. I mean, we did name a planet Uranus after all. And like I mentioned earlier, we just learned in chapter 1073 that one of the Gorosei members' names is Saturn, which is adjacent to Uranus in our own solar system. And right beyond that is the planet Neptune, which is the Roman name for Poseidon, and also Shirahoshi's dad. So there's probably a connection there too. And right beyond that is Pluto, which is an alternate name for Pluton. If Uranus might be a dragon of some sort, and the Sea Kings indicated that Poseidon didn't used to be part of the merfolk, maybe they were a dragon too. And then we have a Gorosei member named after a planet, and they're the head of the celestial dragons. And they're collectively also called the Five Elder Stars. There has to be some type of connection here, right? I mean, are the Gorosei basically ancient weapons themselves? And if you think about it,
I'm glad he said that. Because I was low-key I was gonna say that. I was gonna wait to maybe like the end of this theory. Because I was talking to somebody and I brought up the idea. This might have been in a discussion, and I brought up the idea that the celestial or the Gorosei, because when you look at the pattern of the ancient weapons, they're named after Roman and Greek gods, or in Uranus's case, he's a primordial titan. He's not really a god. He's a primordial titan, which the titans preceded the gods, right? They came before the gods. Uranus, it was like Uranus and Gaia, and then they had kids, which were the titans. And then Kronos of the Titans of that generation, he had kids, which were what became the Greek and Roman gods, Zeus and Poseidon and all them guys, and Hades. So when you look at the ancient weapons, they're named after gods, but the gods in the Roman names are also named after planets. You got Hades, who's named after Pluto, right? Pluton, right? In ancient weapon form. You got Poseidon, which Poseidon is, I think, Neptune as well. I think that's Poseidon's Roman name, but Poseidon in One Piece is Shirahoshi, whose father is Neptune, right? So you got Pluto, you got Neptune. Then you got your Uranus, right? Which is the primordial titan that had the other titans with Gaia, and eventually had the Roman and Greek gods, Zeus, Poseidon, all them guys, right? Hades, etc. And then we learn about these Gorosei members. One of them is named Saturn. So now, if we're looking at it, we could speculate that the Gorosei members are all named after the other planets: Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Earth, possibly. Yeah. So I might be forgetting one. I said Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, Mercury, Earth, Mars. So, yeah. Which means, could they possibly be ancient weapons as well? Since ancient weapons have a connection with the planets and Greek gods, Greek and Roman gods, could they also be ancient weapons? You know, it's making me think that these guys are super strong, bro. You know, which could also mean that Sama, right? Could potentially also be an ancient weapon. Maybe is named after a planet as well. And could be Earth, honestly. If we're being serious, could be Earth. You know, we know that there's the sun god, the forest god, the Earth god. I think Earth god is one of them as well. And I forgot the other gods that were stated as well in One Piece. Could be the Earth god. He could be the Earth god. I think the Earth god is one of them. But could be the Earth god. and he could also be Earth in the lineup, right? So that mean that weapon that we seen destroy Lelugia, maybe that's an extension of Eames, Eam being an ancient weapon. You know, if Eam is indeed an ancient weapon and the Gorosei are ancient weapons, maybe Eam, maybe that what we seen at Lelugia was Eam, his power, you know, like an extension of his power or some sort.
Outer space is almost like another version of the sea, but just on a much bigger scale, and the planets are almost like individual islands. Maybe Uranus was some type of conduit to travel between them for the ancient kingdom, almost like a space king of sorts, as opposed to normal sea kings. Or maybe another way to put it would be a literal celestial dragon, which again would be fitting since Saturn is one of the heads of the celestial dragons. Oda might just have literal lizard people running the world of One Piece. And if we assume that the remaining Gorosei are named after the rest of the planets in our solar system, with Imu probably being tied to Earth and Luffy tied to the sun, then they also very conveniently match up with these 5 elements, which also use the same kanji as 5 of the days of the week, with the other 2 being Sunday and Monday, which appropriately tied to the sun and the moon. Maybe these elements are what their powers are all about. And maybe we're jumping the gun a little bit here, but if we look at their order the first time...
Hold on, let me go back, 'cause I'm curious what this says. So we got Jupiter is wood, Mars, fire, Mercury, water, Saturn, earth, Venus, metal. Okay.
These 5 elements, which also use the same kanji as 5 of the days of the week, with the other 2 being Sunday and Monday, which appropriately tied to the sun and the moon. Maybe these elements are what their powers are all about. And maybe we're jumping the gun a little bit here, but if we look at their order the first time that we meet them, then each of the Gorosei would be associated with these planets. So then each Gorosei would also be associated with each of these elements. And that would mean that the Gandhi-looking Gorosei guy is tied to gold or metal, and he just so happens to have a sword that might just be the supreme grade Shodai Katetsu. I wonder if that sword is actually made out of pure gold, because that's really not something we've seen yet in One Piece. And again, they're all the heads of the celestial...
If it's made out of gold, could it still be a black sword though? A black gold sword. Just saying, you know.
Dragons. I'm just going to keep hammering this home. And Uranus has quite the potential to be a dragon, as I've laid out already, and Uranus is the god of the sky. And if the snakes of Shandora are actually descendants of the original Uranus, like Shirahoshi seems to be to the original Poseidon, then I could understand why they believed it to be a literal god. I mean, at a minimum, the 3 sky races needed some way to get down to Earth. And unless the moon had its own resources, they probably traveled through space gathering resources before that. Maybe the reason they had to go to Earth at all was because Uranus was going to pass away soon. And I know you guys are probably thinking at this point that Nola and its ancestors don't look that much like a dragon like Kaido. And at the very least, they definitely don't create their own sky clouds or anything like that. So how could it ever be related to Uranus? Well, first of all, don't ever judge a book by its cover when it comes to the ancient weapons. Shirahoshi is absolutely massive compared to her parents, and the powers of Poseidon skipped many generations until she was...
Bro, y'all can't come on now. How did what's her name? Neptune's old wife, Queen, I can't remember her name. It's like Amina, something like that. How did she push out this big old baby? Like, what? How did this big old baby come from this little woman? Like, she's like a very tiny woman, right? Like, even by like human standards, she's pretty petite and small. But she pushed out this baby that's bigger than like any human. Like, as a baby, as an infant, she is bigger than a normal man. She is bigger than an NBA player. You telling me this big old baby that's bigger than an NBA player came out of this woman who's smaller than an average woman? The average woman. Come on now. Come on now.
Born. Uranus could very well just work the same way. And like I said earlier, the Sea Kings indicated that the very first Poseidon wasn't a mermaid like Shirahoshi, which could mean that the original Uranus was nothing like the snakes of Shandora or anything else we've seen for that matter either. But what I really think is fitting is that snakes, and even dragons in a lot of types of media, hatch from eggs. So to build off of that point, let's look at one of the few other likely references to Uranus in the story. And that's back in chapter 0 during the Ed War. Shiki told Roger,
bro, we still have yet to learn what is in that damn egg. That egg that Roger was carrying on the ship. Like, what is that egg? Come on, bro. Like, Oda gotta reveal that soon, bro. Like, come on now. You know, that's like one of the biggest mysteries in the world. What is in Goldie Roger's egg? That egg that been on their ship.
That he knew Roger was aware of the location of an ancient weapon that can destroy the world. And it's important to note that Roger already had that huge egg on his ship by this point. Now on face value, Shiki could be referencing any of the 3 ancient weapons, but I think we can at least rule out Poseidon right away because we saw Roger learn about her while he was with Odin, which was after this event. And we can almost rule out Pluton, I think, because we know that its location is revealed by the poneglyph in Alabasta, which he did not visit with Odin. Now maybe Roger somehow learned that information elsewhere, like from someone else that already knew it, but Roger never even stepped foot in Wano. So for him to somehow learn where an ancient weapon was, but never even think about going there, or even mentioning to Odin like, hey, there's an ancient weapon under your country, that would be pretty weird to me. So I don't think that...
Hold on. Roger never stepped in Wano? How'd he get the poneglyph, though? Because there's a rolled poneglyph you need. So he had to, unless Odin just gave it to him. Or unless he didn't. I'm sure he had to step in Wano to get that poneglyph. Unless Odin went and got it himself, he had to step in Wano. He had to.
Pluton is the one that Shiki was talking about. So that leads me to think that Shiki was likely referring to Uranus. Although we don't know where the poneglyph is that tells us its location or anything, and like many theorists have guessed so far, I think Uranus was ironically in the egg that was on Roger's ship right in front of Shiki, and potentially even contributed to the crazy storm that happened during their battle, because we really don't know how it ended other than that Roger won somehow. But how did Roger learn of Uranus's location and find the egg in the first place if he had it before he even met Odin? The whole reason he asked Whitebeard to have Odin join his crew was because he was unable to read the poneglyphs. So someone else who could read them must have shared that information with him, someone that wasn't on his crew. But if Shandora and Alabasta are any indication, it's not so easy to getting access to poneglyphs that share information about the ancient weapons. Shandora went to war to protect their poneglyph 800 years ago, and Alabasta may have been protecting theirs for 4,000 years because that's how old Alubarna is. So what individual from Roger's era, from before the Ed War, would not only have the potential to read poneglyphs, but get access to what is likely a heavily guarded poneglyph, and also reveal it to Roger somehow? Well, one possibility is just the royalty of whatever kingdom holds the poneglyph of Uranus. Neptune and Sukiyaki knew a lot about their history and the secrets that they were guarding, so if Roger had saved an important country like Luffy has done oh so many times, then their royalty sharing that information with him is a possibility. But I think that's almost too simple. Roger's had so many crazy adventures during his day, and there's actually one very important one that we know happened before the Ed War, and that would be God Valley. So I think the person who actually told Roger was none other than Rox D. Zebek. But before I even build off of that idea, we should consider that the ancient weapon poneglyphs have already built somewhat of a pattern. Poseidon, the god of the sea, had their location revealed by a poneglyph in the sky. Then Pluton, the god of the underworld, had their poneglyph underground. So if this trend continues, then I think we can expect to find the poneglyph for the god of the sky underwater at some point. And I think God Valley might make sense because Sengoku already told us that God Valley has been erased off the map, which could mean anything from it being destroyed like Leloucia by an emu blast, it being sent to the sky like Shandora, or even potentially sent to the bottom of the sea. And this would be a nice inversion of what happened to Shandora. I mean, if there's a way to send islands to the sky of all places, I would have to imagine that there's a mechanism to do the reverse. I mean, it's One Piece we're talking about after all. I think this would be a really nice twist because many of us, including
in this lobby, right? Like, I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people really ignore, like, in this lobby. Like, why don't we talk about where that waterfall, that big old mass of emptiness in the middle of in this lobby, where it's a waterfall, but it's like just nothing there, right? Like, where does this waterfall lead and how was it made in the first place? You know what I'm saying? That's why I like the Pluton explanation of Pluton digging through in this lobby to go to Wano, right? I like that idea. I also like the old theory of Laugh-Tale being under in this lobby, right? I like that theory as well. You know, I'm still kind of on board with that one. And Laugh-Tale being under in this lobby. It's just, we got to get an explanation of that, right? Like, because in this lobby is such an interesting location. It's such an interesting location. First, we got that big old waterfall under in this lobby. And then we got the Gates of Justice. Like, the Gates of Justice, which is a very interesting structure. Because we don't see a wall or nothing. There's like no walls that's blocking out. Like, you know, like we got the gates, and then what about the walls next to the gate? Like, can I go around the Gates of Justice? You know, it's never been stated you could. So how are the Gates of Justice standing up? What is protecting? Like, what is stopping me from going around the Gates of Justice? You know, is there like an invisible wall? What? Like, what's stopping me or stopping people from going around the Gates of Justice to escape Impel Down or Marineford or in this lobby? Like, what's holding these gates up? Interesting case, man. Interesting case.
Including myself, have been expecting God Valley to be deleted like Leloucia was, but we really haven't seen an island get erased by sinking into the sea yet, which is odd for a story based on pirates, unless you count the old country of Wano, which is submerged by their own freshwater. But there still is a Wano in the same place on the map, so it's definitely not the same situation. So maybe God Valley was actually sent under the sea. Maybe instead of a knock-up stream, there was something that pulled the island downward. A knock-down stream, if you will. I mean, the only other example that I can think of where we see an island
I knew he was going to say that, a knockdown stream,
getting submerged like that is the ancient city underneath Water 7, which we haven't even actually seen yet, but it's also a potential option for this poneglyph's location, I think. We know that the old shipwrights of Water 7 built Pluton long ago, so I imagine they were allied with the ancient kingdom, so it's entirely possible that they would have a poneglyph. Not to mention that Roger visited Water 7 while he was rounding up all the load poneglyphs with Odin on his way to Laugh-Tale, and I can't imagine he just stopped there just to say hello to everyone unless something important was there. I mean, every other place they stopped at had a poneglyph other than Water 7, so I think Oda just chose not to show it to us because it would probably spoil something. But I actually think there's a chance Oda has already shown us the poneglyph that we're talking about, because a certain Straw Hat did find one underwater in some ancient ruins, and it currently belongs to Big Mom, and the Straw Hats actually have a copy of it, and that would be the poneglyph that Jinbei found in his cover story. Throughout his cover story series, Jinbei basically helps out some sea beasts by figuring out that Wadatsumi had been removing the underwater ruins that they all use as their home, and the ruins landed on a nearby island which caused its own problems. But at the very end, it's revealed that these ruins held a poneglyph inside. Now, on face value, it might be a stretch to think that this poneglyph is the one that would hold the information about Uranus, but there are some important things to note. First off is, like I said, the Straw Hats already have a copy of this poneglyph because we all remember when Brooke went in and got the copy of the Lode poneglyph, but Big Mom also had several next to it, and Brooke came out with several different rubbings. So one of those is likely the same poneglyph that Jinbei brought her during his cover story. And since we've already had it for a while, that probably means that Robin has likely read it already, which fits perfectly into the trend that we already have, where Robin didn't tell us that she knew about Poseidon until we got to Fishman Island, and she didn't tell us that she knew about Pluton until we got to Wano. Robin has a knack for hiding key information that she already knows until the right time. So if this poneglyph...
I mean, like, it makes sense, though. Like, if Robin's flat out stated something, right? Like, she said, hey, Pluton is here. You think the Straw Hats really care? I mean, some of them might. They might listen. Luffy's not going to care. You know, the person who it should mean the most to, it's probably going to mean the least to. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I get why she withheld that information.
If really had information about Uranus, it would be a perfect roundabout way for Robin to have read a poneglyph that was found underwater without us actually having to go there, which matches the other trend I mentioned earlier where Poseidon's poneglyph was in the sky, so Uranus's should be under the sea. Not to mention, we found a lot of poneglyphs already in the story. There are 30 in total, and the wiki shows we found about half of them, and this is technically the third one that we've already seen under the sea, at least at some point in time, because in Roger's flashback we saw 2 down in Fishman Island. Given that all the poneglyphs were meant to be guarded by different allied kingdoms, how many more can we realistically expect to be underwater at this point? I mean,
like I like going to my point earlier about the spinoffs. I know I'm kind of going on a tangent, but since we're talking about poneglyphs, I kind of want to just say this. One of my ideas of a spinoff, which I would think would be a dope spinoff, is if we had like a spinoff of a new character that was like an archaeologist possibly, and their only goal is just to learn the secrets of the world, like all the secrets, and then we could explore certain places we've never been. Maybe some of the poneglyphs that we haven't really, that we've seen, but we don't really know what's, because we never really actually get anything that's on these poneglyphs. Like we never get, like Robin never actually flat out said like, oh, this poneglyph, like each of, like she might have said about a few poneglyphs, but like every poneglyph, we don't know what's said on those poneglyphs. So if we had like a spinoff of like somebody who's like an archaeologist who just goes around trying to discover the secrets of the world, like all the secrets, like secrets that we don't, like that we'll never get an answer to in the main story. Yeah, like if he just went around and each like milestone was like him finding a poneglyph and us learning what exactly is on that poneglyph, and not necessarily the role poneglyphs, because they're more so centered around finding the One Piece. All the poneglyphs that just have like random information on it, like those poneglyphs, you know, like that's what that spinoff series will be focused on. The poneglyphs that don't really matter to finding the One Piece, but they matter to discovering the true history of the world. But then again, that spinoff, they might have to eventually find Laugh-Tale, because Laugh-Tale might also have some secrets as well. You know what I'm saying? But us as the audience, we'll kind of know. You know, we'll know. We won't need to go to Laugh-Tale again. You know what I mean? So if Oda somehow made it to where the character didn't go to Laugh-Tale, or if they did, but we didn't necessarily have to sit there and see it because we've already witnessed it, you know. Like, that's where the series ended, at Laugh-Tale. But, you know.
Ironically, this one was being guarded by sea beasts, while the one in Shandora was being guarded by a sea snake. So I really do like the chances of this poneglyph being the one that talks about Uranus. And since there was a poneglyph here, that would mean that these ruins originally belonged to some nation that was allied with the ancient kingdom. But apparently they fell at some point, and I think there's a decent chance that these ruins were originally found at God Valley. Jinbei started this cover story right outside of the G5 base, which is near the red line in the New World. world, and we know that the celestial dragons were also at God Valley. So the fact that these ruins are so close to the Red Line, and thus Marijois, is a strong start, I think. And if this is the poneglyph with Uranus's location, then maybe the name God Valley means more than we thought, since Uranus is named after the god of the sky after all, and the word valley itself indicates a low-lying area, maybe so low that it got submerged. I don't think Oda would show us this cover story with a future Straw Hat of all things if it wasn't going to be important. I mean, my Pluton theory originated from Gadatsu's cover story of all things, so I think every cover story deserves a second look. Like, is Caribou a clone of this guy or something? But I also would like to take a quick second to thank some of my members, being 3-Day, Saitorius, and Matt Cypher, for helping me with parts of this theory, as well as Itachi, Partha, and the rest of my members for supporting the channel. And I'm actually dropping some members-only content soon, so click join down below if you're interested. But I think there are also a lot of other potentially interesting ties between God Valley and the ancient weapon Uranus. We don't really know all that much about God Valley yet, although we'll take that information whenever you're ready, Oda. We do know that this incident is where Kaido got his devil fruit, and I've already drawn so many potential connections between Kaido and a potential Uranus already. Plus, we saw Kaido apparently left that incident early because of Big Mom's reaction afterward, where she was asking where he went. Could it be that Rock said something that motivated him, or maybe even upset him so much that he had to take off right away? I mean, almost every time a big-time character has died in One Piece, their final words carry a ton of weight. I mean, Roger started the Great Pirate Era, Whitebeard said the One Piece is real and started a meme, and Odin claimed that someone was coming to save Wano in the future, and that Odin was born to boil. So I can only imagine that someone with the stature of Zebek had some famous final words as well. And what if they were about the location of Uranus, a weapon that has the power to destroy the world?
That'd be wild. Zebek give us this great ass speech, and Blackbeard is around. You know, even though look, you know, there's a theory out there that say Blackbeard might be a failed clone of Zebek. So maybe I'm wrong about that specific one. I kind of like that theory. Blackbeard being a failed clone of Zebek. Or maybe not a failed clone, but being a clone of Zebek, possibly.
World. I mean, if Rox read the poneglyph for Uranus, it would only tell him the location, and not the powers or what it looks like or anything like that. And we know that because of the poneglyph in Chandora, which only told Odin where Poseidon would be found, and not that it would be a mermaid or anything like that. That could explain why Kaido took off right away, and maybe even why he got that fruit from Big Mom in the first place. Maybe he wanted to take off for the sky as quick as possible and search for that ancient weapon. And Kaido and Big Mom said specifically that they were going to get the ancient weapons when they teamed up in Wano. I mean, if Kaido respected Rox, which I highly suspect he did, because Kaido respects strength the most, and Rox is undoubtedly one of the most top tiers of all time, maybe he wanted to do everything he could to avenge his captain, and maybe even fulfill his captain's dream. Maybe Kaido even has a small case of the Yamato syndrome, where he was so moved by someone's death that he spent the rest of his life trying to be like them and live out their dream, as opposed to his own. And I think that would be really fitting, especially if Yamato ends up realizing that she shouldn't be like Odin, but be better than him, or something like that at least. But either way, if Uranus really is in that egg, then I can absolutely see why Roger kept it with him during his journey. I mean, if a bunch of strong pirates like the Rox pirates knew of its original whereabouts, it's probably a lot safer to keep with Roger, since his crew is the strongest in all of the seas. And it would also remove the burden from the people that lived wherever the egg was found. Which, if you haven't pieced it together by now, I think that egg was definitely found in Chandora, because that egg is probably from Nola, meaning that the first offspring from this lineage that was born after it was sent to the sky is Uranus, which would just be poetic if you ask me. And I think there's actually evidence for this too, and that's because of how nonchalantly Roger and Odin got to the poneglyph when they visited Skypiea. I mean, there was no fanfare at all. It was all business. We didn't see him greet everyone like we saw in Water 7, Zoe, or Fishman Island. It was literally a page and a half from the start of the knockup stream to Odin finishing up the carving of Roger's message. And based off what we've learned about the Shandians, do you think for a single second that they'd let just anyone walk in and access that poneglyph? I mean, they they fought a war 800 years ago to protect that thing, and they haven't been particularly cheerful to visitors lately. That tells me that Roger had to have met them at some point in the past and built a very positive relationship with them, much like Nolan and Luffy did. So I'm guessing Roger had visited there at some point before and befriended them, and maybe it was because he took Nola's egg for safekeeping. I mean, it feels to me like Oda really went out of his way to keep this Skypiea flashback short and sweet, and maybe that's because there's a lot to hide here. Maybe after God Valley, several Rocks pirates raced to Skypiea to try and find the ancient weapon, but Roger protected them and took the egg to reduce the threat that they faced. I mean, if this is all true, wouldn't that also put our introduction to Kaido into new perspective? We've always wondered why he's so depressed and trying to find ways to die. And the very first time we saw him, he jumped from Balloon Terminal, which is a sky island. What if he had just given up looking in the sky for this ancient weapon, meaning his dreams were basically crushed, and so thus he just jumped off the island in defeat? I mean, Urouge was up there with him, who is also a Birkin, but also a monk. So maybe he was there helping Kaido look around Sky Islands in a peaceful manner to show him that there is no ancient weapon. Kaido probably...
Yeah, I remember there was a theory out there, I forgot who was saying this, about Urouge being part of the Beast Pirates. I don't think that never really came to play, though. That theory right there never came to play. That was an interesting one. I didn't think so. Somebody said he was like a secret agent of Kaido or some sort. Like, I don't know. That one never came to be, though.
Felt completely defeated after not being able to find it. Maybe because he feels like he failed as captain, or maybe he believed all the history that they discovered together was a lie. Maybe he already knew about the prophecy of Joy Boy coming in the future, but he just no longer believed it because of this experience. If Uranus isn't where the poneglyph said it would be, why would Joy Boy be real, and why would he show up when they said that he would? Maybe that's why he laughed when King thought that he could be Joy Boy. Maybe Kaido thought the existence of Joy Boy was just as likely as Nolan thought the existence of a sun god was. When he said only Joy Boy can beat me, maybe that's a backhanded joke to say like, yeah, I'll lose when God himself comes down to fight me. Or like in other words, yeah, I'll lose when pigs fly. Kaido was also called the strong.
I kind of like that idea right there, that Kaido was just like saying like, yeah, I'll do it when hell freezes over. You know, it's like one of them statements where it's just it's like, yeah, I'm so good that in order for me to lose, I have to lose to God himself, right? Which kind of contradicts this idea that you know, people believe in Shanks to be stronger than Kaido. If Kaido is making them type of jokes, it's like, hey, Shanks can't beat me, Whitebeard can't beat me, Big Mom can't beat me. The only person that could come down here and beat me is God himself. You know what I'm saying?
Strongest on land, sea, and air. And we know the ancient weapons are the gods of the underworld, sea, and the sky, which match up pretty well. And since Joy Boy is meant to lead those three ancient weapons, could this also be a reason why King thought Kaido was actually Joy Boy? And let's also consider the fact that Kaido never awakened his mythical dragon fruit. And I've spent most of this video talking about how important all these dragons could be.
Bruh, that is a crime that Oda never gave us a Kaido awakening. That is a crime. For real. We never got no ridiculous hockey feats from Kaido after he said all that hockey stuff. We ain't get no awakened devil fruit. Maybe Kaido comes back into the story though, and then we'll get some real Kaido stuff. But I don't see why he wouldn't have shown us that against Gear 5th Luffy, since that was going to be his biggest fight in the series. Because even if Kaido comes back, I don't think he's going to have another fight as big as the fight he had with Luffy, you know?
So Oda is probably hiding that from us for a reason. And for the record, I know that some believe he did awaken, but until Oda confirms that like he has for the other awakenings, I'm going to assume that he didn't. But we did see that he covered himself in magma toward the end before he lost to Luffy. So I thought to myself, what's the next step above that? Something that would be fitting of the sun god that King thought he was. So what if Kaido's awakening basically lets him use the powers of the sun like he did fire and magma, like literal star power? Basically, what if it lets him become a literal celestial dragon? In some ways, he would be a sun god as well, but not the real one, of course, which is...
That's pretty interesting. So, I mean, I guess Kaido would show King, because my question was, did King see the full extent of Kaido's powers to come up with this observation? Like, was Kaido like, yo, I want to show you everything I could do, so you, since you're going to be serving me, you at least know the full potential of my, or the full extent of my power. And then Kaido showed King, and then King was like, oh wow, that's amazing. You must be Joy Boy, right? Because I guess it could make sense that Kaido would show him just so King knew, right? King knows how strong Kaido is, you know, but it just seems kind of random Kaido just to be showing what he can do, just to do it. Like, hey, see what it look. Let me show you what I can do. But it makes sense. I don't want to say it's a stretch that Kaido would, or anybody would do something like that, you know.
He would literally have powers of the sun. And if Kaido does come back, which I definitely think he will, this would be a pretty decent way to pull it off, I think. And while I wasn't a huge fan of how Kaido's flashback was kind of skimmed over in Wano, I do think that this type of backstory would be
Right, yeah, I agree with you right there, Dex. I feel as though Oda really did just kind of skim through the whole Kaido flashback. But I also think Oda might flesh it out a little more in the anime. Like, maybe in the anime we'll get a little more of Kaido's flashback instead of just this very short. I think it was like 1 or 2 pages. So yeah, I don't like how Oda skimmed through a lot of stuff in Wano, but I kind of think he purposely did that so the anime can flesh things out, you know. But I don't have any evidence that's Oda's intention, but that's one thing I've been noticing. I've been noticing the anime been going into more depth than the manga has been going. So I think a lot of stuff that Oda didn't do in the Wano arc, I think it's been intentional. So just to incentivize people to watch the anime more. I can't prove that, but that's what I believe. That's what I believe.
fitting for a character like him who obviously ended up losing to Joy Boy anyways. I mean, imagine if he originally wanted to change the world for good, but after having a reason to doubt the history that he learned with rocks, he wanted to start the world's biggest war because he didn't think the prophesized one was gonna happen. Maybe it wasn't that he was just straight up evil, but he knew a war was supposed to happen, and he decided to make sure it happened because he thought the history was already wrong. But I want to get back to Uranus, so I'll save the rest of the Kaido and rocks discussion for another video that's coming soon, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. So let's now talk about the powers, design, and whatever else that is specific to Uranus. And I suspect it's basically going to be a bigger version of Kaido's dragon form. And I say that because Nola was already huge after it grew up, but Roger's egg was many times the size of young Nola. But I also imagine that Uranus looks much derpier because this is Oda.
If Uranus is indeed like a snake, though, I could see it being like the world snake, like that snake I was talking about earlier. The snake that if you ever played God of War, like the reboot, the new God of War, if you played the one that I think dropped in like 2018, I want to say, it was 2018, yeah, 2018, somewhere around that time. There was like this big ass snake there that was like a world snake, or they called it the world snake. And I think that's more connected with Norse mythology and not like Roman and Greek mythology. But hey, it's it's still could mean something nonetheless, right?
We're talking about. And I think he's also going to find some way to make every ancient weapon look very unexpected. I mean, if you've seen my Pluton theory, then you already know there's potential with that one. And Poseidon was a mermaid, which Odin didn't even see coming despite reading the poneglyph for it. And I wouldn't be surprised if Uranus looked a lot like this thing that we saw in space. I mean, I'm not really sure what this thing is, but it was found helping the space pirates during Enel's cover story. And it just looks so happy for some reason, but don't let that distract you from the fact that it's a sentient space creature that can apparently build things on the moon. And that's not the only space creature we've heard of. Like, what about the one in Vegapunk's lab that Kaku and Luffy ran into? It's almost like a twisted version of the banana dials that we saw in Alabasta. So maybe space creatures are just different evolutions of creatures that we find on the One Piece Earth. And if we go back to our friends on the moon, the markings on his stomach almost make me think it could be a space whale of some sort, except it's all stretched out, which I'd be a fool not to at least mention the possibility that this has something
like a whale and snake hybrid. It looks like, like a lot of the features look like a whale, but the fact that it could almost like bend its neck like a snake, though, and it has like a slender, slithery body like a snake as well, but it kind of looks like a whale. So
something to do with the awakening of the Nika fruit. Or maybe it paid a visit to my boys at Long Ring Longland. I mean, we know whales can have islands inside of them that people can stay inside of, so what if Uranus was just a stretched out space whale type thing for people to ride in and travel through space? And that's where Nola's ability comes in that is often forgotten, which is...
It's kind of like, if you guys ever watch Star Wars, there are these creatures that actually travel in space. They look like whales, though. They look like whales and they travel in space. It kind of plays into the idea that Oda likes Star Wars, and he has a lot of Star Wars type themes like German, like Order 66 or German 66, right? And the clones and all that. So if Oda is indeed a fan of Star Wars and takes a lot of inspiration of Star Wars into One Piece, there's these things, I can't remember what they're called, but they're like these creatures, these whale-like creatures in Star Wars. They travel through space and they have hyperdrive, like they could go into hyperdrive, which if you know like the in-depth history of Star Wars as far as like the universe, like a lot of stories and what goes on in Star Wars, hyperdrive, like the ships that have hyperdrives in Star Wars I guess they were influenced by these whales that travel, because they do the hyperdrive as well. And so the people in Star Wars, the sentient people, they got influenced by that, and they created hyperdrive into ships because of those space whales. You know what I mean? So, and the thing about those space whales is sometimes a lot of ships crash into them when they go into hyperdrive, because those whales can also do hyperdrive as well. So they could kill you. They could destroy your spaceship if you're not careful.
This is how observation hockey or mantra wouldn't work through it. And Nell couldn't detect Luffy while he was stuck inside of Nola, and Isa couldn't detect anyone outside of it while she was stuck inside. Why would a living creature have this ability? Especially one that I've already mentioned could be tied to space travel in some way. It's almost like it's the perfect vehicle for espionage so you could travel undetected. And maybe its descendant, Uranus, can do the same. And that actually builds an interesting parallel to Luffy in Fishman Island, who hid inside of Ho the whale until the perfect time to save them from Hody. So there's just all sorts of connections here, I think. I mean, what if Uranus was used as some type of Trojan horse for the ancient kingdom? Or even for the celestial dragons, because, Uranus kind of is a celestial dragon if it really is a sea snake-like creature that travels in space. And that's kind of interesting because the Greek god Uranus is a bit different than Pluton and Poseidon. Uranus actually fathered the 12 Titans with his wife Gaia, who represents the Earth. And long story short, Uranus is basically Pluton and Poseidon's grandpa in Greek mythology. And Uranus is actually the god of the sky and the heavens, which also could indicate a bigger tie into space and maybe even the first arrival of several races to the Earth. So while I expect Uranus to be a bit silly because it's Oda's story, I also expect it to have some insane powers. Just like a mermaid that can control massive sea monsters and a ship that can apparently destroy the world, I expect Uranus to be worthy of the name of an ancient weapon. And of course, the first step to that is simply the ability to fly. And I would suspect that it uses some kind of clouds to fly just like dragons do, but maybe they use sky clouds instead of flame clouds.
And it kind of makes sense because, like, I constantly say Uranus possibly controlling weather. And I think dragons, especially like Eastern dragons, I think they have a level of weather control. Matter of fact, Kaido has shown weather-like abilities. So if Uranus is indeed a big serpent, right, or a dragon, a celestial dragon, for example, then it wouldn't be a stretch for him to be able to control the weather too. You know what I'm saying? Like he could probably even control the weather at like a planetary level, especially if he's like super big, like the world snake that I keep bringing up.
And whenever it travels in space, I think it uses a different mechanism, and that would be wings. The first reason I say that is because all of the moon races have wings themselves. The Shandians, Skypians, and Birkins all have them, even if they don't actually work on Earth. And then King also has wings, but his actually do work on Earth. And I think the reason that the first three races have wings that don't work on Earth is because they probably worked a lot better when they lived on the moon, where they originated and there's less gravity. So I bet they had no...
I kind of think Lunarians were like I think the other sky races evolved to where their wings are just kind of like not that functional, right? Where Lunarians might be the original, like they may be the original race the other sky races evolved from, right? And they needed to actually use their wings. So, you know, like a lot of animals that are like the old animals, like the old primitive animals, they're primitive, but they probably have the best survival mechanisms, right? Because like when you look at now, the like crocodiles, for example, crocodiles are probably one of the most primitive animals around. Like crocodiles and like maybe some fish and some like cockroaches and stuff, right? Crocodiles are very primitive. Like they don't really think, they're more instinctual. They're more survival, but they're great survivors. You know, they've been around for as long as they are because they have some of the best survival mechanisms ever, but they're super primitive. You could probably say the same with like cockroaches. Like cockroaches will probably out survive us all. Like when we're dead and we're gone, roaches will still be around. They will still exist. And you know, they probably have a very primitive biological design, kind of like crocodiles as well. But it's great for survival. Same with Lunarians. Lunarians probably were more primitive than the other sky races. So like survival wise and because we know that they're meant to survive in any climate. And I would go as far as to say that they probably predated the other sky races, the Skypians, the Belkans, and the Shandians. So, you know, I think the other races evolved from Lunarians and they became a little less as good as the Lunarians. So, but you know, that's just kind of my speculation.
No problem flying back in the day, but because of the increased gravity on Earth, they probably couldn't use them anymore. Which then raises the question of why King can fly on Earth, despite his race seemingly coming from the moon as well. And also, why can King's race survive in such harsh environments? Well, maybe that's because they aren't from the same moon as these other races in the first place. But anyway, as it pertains to Uranus, it having wings to fly in space makes a lot of sense. Shirahoshi was the fastest swimmer in Fishman Island, so I can only imagine that Uranus is going to be an absolute speedster in space as well. Since like I said, space is almost like a bigger version of the sea, and having wings ties it to another popular creature that people often bring up in Uranus theories, and that is Quetzalcoatl. And if you haven't heard of it before, I'll just give you the very quick cliff notes. Quetzalcoatl is a feathered serpent deity that also comes with wings, and it's from ancient Mesoamerican culture, which honestly has a lot of parallels to the Shandians, and many descriptions of this deity say that it breathed life into man, or at least those in their society. So in a sense, they all owe their existence to this deity. And that builds a really interesting connection to what I said earlier about the Greek god Uranus being the father of the Titans, as well as how strongly the Shandians believed in their god. And to build onto this even more, take a look at this panel from the Alabaster Crypt that dates back almost 4,000 years ago. I've already discussed in other videos about how Poseidon...
Yeah, you can see like a drag. If you look to the right side of the page, you can see it's like the bottom right. You can see like a dragon looking thing or a serpent.
and Pluton might be illustrated on these sides of the room, but what's important is what's up here in the middle. I mean, what does that look like to you? Because to me, it looks like what you'd see if you looked at Kaido or Momonosuke or Nola head on. It's a circle to represent their tubular body, basically, but it all.
I can't believe he might prove me wrong, but he didn't catch this dragon down here. Like if you go back. Hold on.
God Uranus being the father of the Titans, as well as how strongly the Shandians believed in their god. And to build onto this even more, take a look at this panel from the Alabasta crypt that dates back almost 4,000.
Right here, if you look at the bottom right corner of the screen, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell because I know I got my comments right there, but if you look through the chat, you see this little serpent. It's like at the very bottom right corner, you see this serpent-like creature. I'm surprised he didn't point that out.
1,000 years ago. I've already discussed in other videos about how Poseidon and Pluton might be illustrated on these sides of the room, but what's important is what's up here in the middle. I mean, what does that look like to you? Because to me, it looks like what you'd see if you looked at Kaido or Momonosuke or Nola head on. It's a circle to represent their tubular body.
But that can also just be like horns, though. Not horns. That could be like ogres, because Marshall D. Preach, right? Marshall D. Preach. He was going on like a lot about Joy Boy being a ogre of some sort or being a giant. So kind of like Ors. Or this was Wizard of Ors. Wizard of Ors is speculation about Joy Boy being Ors or of Ors's race. So that could kind of go more into the whole ogres and Ors race people. You know what I mean?
Basically, but it also has the iconic mustache. And underneath there are these three symbols, which I think signify flame clouds. And this symbol is in the dead center, right between two guardian deities of Alabasta. And the fruits for these deities belong to the top two members of the Alabasta army. So for this symbol to be in the middle means it must be extremely important. I mean, what if Uranus was basically the guardian deity of Earth at some point? And I think there's a lot to say about that, but this video is already getting pretty long, so I'm just gonna save it for my future Ancient Weapon Origins video that's coming out in about a month or so. But we also need to ask ourselves where Uranus is at right now. If it really is in that egg, then it didn't hatch last time we saw it, but that was over 20 years ago. So where could it possibly be now? Well, it might be a basic answer, but I think it's with Skopper Gaban, and it probably hatched around the same time that Shirahoshi was born so that their connection gets even deeper. This would also give more reason to Roger's line about being too early. Maybe Poseidon wasn't born yet, Uranus hadn't hatched yet, and Joy Boy wasn't around yet. They probably all need to work together to accomplish whatever big event is going to occur in the final saga, and the reason I say Skopper Gaban of all people is the one with Uranus is because if Roger decided to take that egg with him during his whole journey, all the way to the very end, then I doubt he just dropped it off just anywhere before he died, or just let any bozo guard it in his stead, especially since it was going to hatch at some point, I would assume. So much like Rayleigh stayed at Sabaody and had a role to play by getting pirates to the New World, I think Skopper has been with Uranus since the Roger Pirates disbanded. And that leads me to another point. Who possibly controls this creature? I mean, if Shirahoshi controls the Sea Kings, then surely Uranus is going to have someone leading it as well, right? Well, to keep this part as short as possible, I think it's going to be Isa from Skypiea. She had crazy mantra for some reason, which may be a precursor to the voice of all things, and she was born on a sky island, which fits right in with Uranus. But I do think there's a good chance for Vivi as
I don't know. I think that might be a stretch that it'd be her. I just don't see her as important of a character to hold that type of responsibility. I mean, it's possible. Like, Oda knows how to make irrelevant characters into very important characters, but I don't know. I think that might be a stretch.
as well. I personally have her penciled in for Pluton because she was born where the Pluton poneglyph was found after all. But of course, Vivi also made it rain at the end of the Alabasta arc, which was like a miracle at the time. So whoever it is, I think it's going to be one of these two that control Uranus. But let's wrap this up with the rest of the powers that Uranus will possess. Because for it to be capable of destroying the world, it's gotta pack a punch. And maybe some of you are jumping right to Emu's blast in chapter 1060. But for many reasons that I've
I'm glad he brings this up. I'm glad he has acknowledged this moment, you know. Because look, again, I'm not trying to say that that thing was definitely for sure Uranus, but I mean, I don't really know what else it could be. You know what I'm saying? That destructive, capable of destroying the island. I mean, it sounds like an ancient weapon. Sounds like an ancient weapon to me. But it doesn't mean that it is for sure an ancient weapon, you know, or it doesn't mean that it's Uranus of all ancient weapons. You know, let me specify that it doesn't mean it is Uranus. It could still be an ancient weapon, just doesn't mean it's Uranus.
I've laid out in other videos, I think that attack was something tied to Emu's power specifically and not the current ancient weapon Uranus. I mean, maybe Emu is a past version of Uranus, which would be an amazing twist, especially if God Valley actually did end up having a connection to Uranus as I predicted since the Celestial Dragons were there. But I think the most important power that Uranus will possess is the ability to control the weather. And the way it will do that is the exact same way that Nami does, which is with clouds, which is fitting since Nami also used weather eggs, and that's where Uranus is.
I'm glad Dak talking about the weather. I'm glad because hey, that's the bulk of my theory about Uranus is having some weather control ability. What it is it living? Is it a ship? Is it technology? Is it? I don't really have that, you know, clear or like I don't have that down, but I think I think whatever it is, it's weather. It's related to weather control. You know what I'm saying?
Is hatching from. I mean, Kaido was able to control the weather a decent amount himself, either by pulling in clouds to block the moon or creating crazy winds or what have you. So just imagine that, but on a whole new level, where they can even create rain, snow, lightning, hails, tornadoes, or whatever you want. Nami usually does this by creating weather balls to create hot and cold zones that create lightning strikes of different sizes. And if Uranus is going to be as massive as I expect, which would probably be even bigger than Kaido, then it probably could destroy the world, especially if it can create winds so strong that it alters the spin of the planet, because then it would create tsunamis and eruptions and who knows what else that would surely spell the end of the planet. Kind of like Oda told us in this SBS about how important the swirls of the planet are. And I wouldn't be surprised if Uranus was also able to do a massive Boro breath, which that alone could devastate the planet. But I doubt that's what the ancient kingdom used it for. When we were in Alabasta, the main issue was a lack of water because of the dance powder. But of course, after Luffy's battle with Crocodile ended and Vivi shouted to her people long enough, it rained. It was like salvation to their people, and I think that's what Uranus was used for long ago in the past. Instead of taking water from other countries, I bet Uranus was able to provide rain to any country that needed it. It could make it warmer if they were cold, or colder if they were warm, kind of like Vegapunk has been working on since he was a kid back in Karakuri Island. And maybe it could even make troublesome islands more habitable, like Raijin Island or even Punk Hazard today. Whatever it was, I think much like the other ancient weapons, Uranus is just a good thing that can be used in wrong ways. But if you want more information on clouds and how important they are to One Piece, I definitely recommend these videos from my friend Ayo Larry and Parvision because they covered a lot of information that I didn't manage to get to here. But as always guys, thank you so much for watching and I'll catch you next time. Later.
Alright, shout out to Dak Saki. Make sure, let me give him a like as well. Make sure y'all go show Dak Saki some love. The link will be in the description box. So yeah, man, I don't really have much to add. You know, that was a lengthy video. He said a lot, right? Like I'll just say I don't know if we're going to space. I mean, he didn't really talk a lot about going to space, like us actually going to space. Like the series taking us to space. He didn't say that. Or he didn't really, you know, he wasn't really selling that. Like he might have stated it one time at one point, like, you know, but that's going to be my pushback. Anything where we're actually leaving space, I just don't think we have the time to actually take this series to space, especially with everything we have to cover. And I know Oda stated that he was trying to wrap up the series to 3 to 5 years, and when he said it, I kind of thought it was BS. But I do believe that Oda is trying to approach that. I do believe Oda is trying to wrap this series up. I just think realistically, it's not going to wrap up in 3 to 5 years. Five, like from the time he said it, still a stretch, but that is the more realistic part of the spectrum that I seen. I think it would have been more like maybe 7, 8, maybe, but especially with that's counting everything that we have to cover before we end the series. Getting Laugh Tale finding the One Piece, World Government versus Pirates, Blackbeard versus Luffy, and the Blackbeard Pirates versus Straw Hat Pirates, Elbaf, right? Elbaf. That's like four things right there, you know, to cover in like 3 to 5 years. I think that's just a little too much. And we see how long arcs. We see how long it takes Oda to really give us an arc, right? You know, to give us to flesh out characters, to flesh out the story part of the arc. You know what I mean? So realistically, 5 years was the best bet, but even then, I thought that was a little short. So yeah, I didn't really believe the whole 3 to 5 year thing that Oda said, and I think he even clarified that, like, yeah, I don't think that's going to be the case. It being ending in 3 to 5 years. So yeah, so us going to space, I think will add something that will give us at least another 2 to 3 years, and I do believe Oda is trying to wrap this series up. You know, maybe not within 3 to 5 years, but as soon as he could, that without messing up the quality of the story. And I think going to space just kind of adds too much to the story, right? So I just don't think we're going to space. As far as Uranus being a snake, I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if I agree with that. Dex did a great job explaining, and I don't think it's a stretch of it being a snake. I just don't think it is a snake. You know what I mean? I do think what we seen at Lelougia, at least at the moment, I do think what we seen at Lelougia is most likely Uranus. Most likely. Things could change. I'm not sitting here trying to say like that is definitely Uranus, but I think it's most likely Uranus because with that thing shown, it's shown that it is capable of destroying islands. The only thing that we know of that's capable of destroying the island is Pluton. And so that makes me believe that ancient weapons are the only things in existence in the One Piece world capable of destroying islands in the way that whatever that thing that destroyed Lelougia. Because before that, in order to destroy a island, you need a buster call. You know, that a buster call. You need a bunch of Navy ships bombard islands. You know, that was how normal humans were capable of destroying islands, unless you had like a devil fruit that was capable of destroying islands as well. But so to me, it's just saying like just from the evidence of what we've seen of things that are capable of destroying islands, it just seems like that thing that Lelougia has to be a ancient weapon, or it's an ancient weapon level weapon, kind of like what somebody said in the chat. It's an ancient weapon level weapon, you know, which is possible, you know, or the idea that Emu himself is an ancient weapon as well. So if that is true, then that the thing we seen at Lelougia may not be Uranus. So, but for now, until we get some confirmation that, you know, Eam is an ancient weapon, or he has something like the world government built some on the level of ancient weapons, I gotta just assume that the thing we seen at Lelugia is most likely Uranus. It's most likely. You know, I'm not saying it is for sure, but it's most likely. And I don't know if we're going to space, so I don't know if Uranus is going to be connected with going to space. You know what I mean? But yeah, anyway, that was a good video, good theory. Shout out to Saki. But yeah, that's all I pretty much have on the video. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Also, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Comment down below your thoughts on the video today. What do you think about Uranus? What do you believe Uranus to be? Is it a snake-like creature? Is it a dragon-like creature? What is it? Is it a serpent, pretty much? Or is it like technology? You know, I had a theory earlier that Uranus could be a devil fruit. Again, I don't know how firm I am in believing in that, especially after the whole Illusia thing. You know, it's still possible, but again, that thing at Illusia seems like it's the leading candidate of what is Uranus. So, you know. Also, follow me on Twitch if you want to engage with me in real time as I do my lives. If you want to get at me directly, then make sure you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And join the Discord. That is probably going to be the best place to reach out to me because that's where I'm the most active at. If you want to send me videos like the video we reacted to today, the Discord, I have a channel there for you guys to send me videos. Or if you want to be part of a future discussion stream, make sure you are a member of the Discord. Also, all of these will be in the description box below, as well as the link to the video that we reacted to today. So make sure you guys go show Saki some love. Anyway, it's your boy Sean P, the Bluff God. Y'all have a good one. Peace.